We'll call the January 5th commission meeting, planning commission meeting to order at 6:07. And the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, y'all keep moving this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next order is to adopt the agenda. Does anyone have anything that they want to add? Okay. And I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I make a motion we adopt the agenda as presented.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, then we have the approval of the planning commission meeting minutes from November 3rd. Pretty much same order of business as tonight. Did anyone have anything that they wanted to bring to staff's notice about the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
The planning commission meeting
Yep,
minutes? Okay.
the minutes.
Oh. Barbara, are you good with that?
Oh, yes.
You want a second then?
I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's fine. All right, then the new business is a public hearing for total auto sales at 5330 US Highway 12, and variance to allow reduced setbacks. And what we'll do is if you want to give a brief update, and then we'll do public hearing and kind of go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Honorable Chair, Commissioners, this item's coming back before the Planning Commission tonight as a result of the applicant preparing a site plan based on the recommendation that the Planning Commission had made at the last Planning Commission meeting. Once the applicant actually put together and prepared that scaled site plan, which is what we had talked about wanting from the applicant, after they had done that exercise, they identified that the site could accommodate 12 parking spaces based on the engineer's layout that they had put together the site plan. The Planning Commission at that last meeting had stipulated certain conditions of the Planning Commission approval, and with those stipulations set setback requirements based on the applicant's request for a variance. Planning Commission recommended that the setback from Highway 12 be 10 feet from the right-of-way line. You can see that illustrated in this exhibit or on this site plan. The applicant's showing this area here as a 10-foot setback, keeping that clear zone that the Planning Commission had talked about. 5 feet setback from the west property line, so this is the west property line here. The applicant identified this 5-foot setback through here for those parking spaces. A 0-foot setback from the east property line at a point that begins parallel to the vegetative area or the parking area there. So this area here would have a setback of 0 feet up to the point where that natural median or parking curb extends out. And then a rear yard setback of 10 feet, again illustrated on this plan, the 10 foot's in this area here. And then no parking spaces shall be permitted in the southeast corner of the site where there's a shared driveway from Highway 12 up to that existing wooded area. So this corner here would be kept clear. One of the things to note on that, part of that recommendation was based on the comment from the neighboring property owner who had concerns about the shared driveway access and maintaining that clear zone. And then parking stalls are required to be 8 feet wide by 18 feet in length, which is what is proposed on this site plan. So the applicant put together this plan based on those criteria and came up with this 12 spaces, 1 handicap accessible space, 1 customer parking space, and the rest display or vehicle display spaces within that site. The applicant looked at that and came back to the city and said they don't believe that they can operate their business utilizing the 12 spaces. They feel that that site can accommodate more spaces, and they wanted to bring back this plan along with a kind of max scenario plan to the Planning Commission as new information that the Planning Commission could use to consider the initial variance request. Again, the variance request was to allow a reduction in setbacks from all sides of the property, as well as a reduction in the parking space dimension size. And so, with that in mind, the applicant put together then this site plan, which is what I would call a max scenario site plan that would accommodate approximately 32 parking spaces on that site. So quite a bit of difference from 12 to 32 spaces. There is really no setback. I mean, you can see there's maybe a foot or two in certain locations along that site, but there's no noticeable setback or really substantial setback that's being proposed or would be proposed as a part of that. The other key difference in this plan is that the applicant's proposing to keep an 8-foot aisle or clear zone around the building. If you'll recall, that 8-foot was part of the initial recommendation made by Maple Plain Fire Department in the 2013 conditional use permit amendment request. But upon review of this plan by Maple Plain Fire previously, and the fire chief or the former fire chief was with us at that last meeting, it was recommended that that drive aisle actually be increased. And the discussion really was more than just fire related, it was vehicular access related. And it was noted at that meeting that an 8-foot wide drive aisle does not accommodate turning movements around the perimeter of that building. And therefore it would, without moving vehicles, you couldn't circulate around that building with the 8-foot drive aisle. So the applicant prepared this as a alternative sketch for consideration by the Planning Commission. They did note they don't necessarily expect that the city would consider 32 spaces, but they wanted to illustrate with a scaled plan what they think that the overall site could physically accommodate. The couple of notes that I brought out or pointed out in the report, the 12-foot drive aisle that we had recommended around the building is really a minimum that would allow vehicular circulation around that perimeter. If you were to go with much less or any less, making this physical turning movement in a car of any size really becomes difficult. You can't make 90-degree turns within a 12-foot area very successfully. And one of our goals was to maintain a circulation route, not necessarily for vehicles, but if you want the site to be able to function where vehicles can get to these parking spaces without moving other vehicles, you'd have to maintain at minimum that. The second point that I wanted to point out is the West Hennepin Public Safety had requested that this area here be maintained as a clear zone along the highway. That can be better illustrated, I think, in this aerial photograph, where you can see that even where the cars are parked in this photograph, or even if they were parked right up against this line, what West Hennepin's looking at is cars that are turning out of these driveway points, that they have the ability to see down the road and maintain that clear. The other point on that, this is going to be difficult to see, but just, I guess from a general perspective, you can see where these cars are located in relation to the right-of-way. But then if you look along this corridor, going along all the way here, and look along this corridor here, there's really only maybe one other example of cars or vehicles that are that close to the right-of-way. You can see with the adjacent property how the city was looking to maintain a setback, here. And, you know, when we're talking about redevelopment of some of our other properties to the east of this, we've also looked at maintaining a setback along that Highway 12 corridor. So, in going back to this particular sketch where there isn't a setback along there, that was one of the safety concerns that was brought up. And then as it relates to, I think, the other setbacks, as we discussed them, the Planning Commission talked about the idea that these properties to the west, to the north, and to the east are, only one of those is developed at this point, and it's likely that in the future, as these properties develop, we're gonna want to have some sort of a setback maintained for those properties. And again, if you look at the aerial photograph, you can see that currently this property is undeveloped on both the north side here and the west side here. This property is developed, although it's for sale, and I would anticipate that at some point in the future that either redevelops wholly or even if it's maintained as what it is, that there would be some redevelopment or redoing of that parking lot, which is in pretty rough condition at this point. And that was one of the points that the Planning Commission had pointed out or discussed, I guess, was maintaining a reasonable setback so that the onus of any kind of a separation between the property lines in this other property is not solely then placed on the vacant property. And so those were some of the, I think, key considerations that were made. One of the things that I looked at with this plan is, are there opportunities to expand the parking areas within this plan? Would there be anywhere that you could potentially realize, I think, additional parking spaces? I identified two areas in red. One, I think you could potentially get additional parking in this location here that would yield an additional space. And then I do believe with this corner, the way that it's set up, you could realize or potentially find the ability to have two parking spaces. Those would be more vehicle display spaces, but we are talking about a car lot. So in that particular case, I don't know that you have to have full pull-in access to every single space from a drive aisle necessarily. There's no impediments to being able to put cars in this location. So with that, it's possible with the plan that maintain the setbacks prescribed by the Planning Commission at the last meeting, that you could get maybe up to 15 parking spaces without really compromising, I think, the integrity of the setbacks that were suggested or recommended by the Planning Commission. Outside of that, without moving these spaces into this setback area along Highway 12 and without compromising the setback along the north property line, I don't know that you could yield any additional spaces. If the Planning Commission were to look at a reduction in setback along the north property line, would probably be the most favorable just from a safety perspective and a visibility or aesthetics perspective, in that area doesn't have the same Highway 12 visibility. And if that setback was reduced, that could potentially yield additional spaces. That's if the Planning Commission wanted to consider other spaces. The last thing I'll point out on this site is that I know in practice it hasn't, the site hasn't ever followed, I don't believe, that 12 car provision in the conditional use. But it should be noted that prior to 2013, the conditional use permit of the city stipulated 12 cars. And maybe that's because that's probably what fit on that site initially. But again, in practice, I don't think that was followed, at least not in the recent history of that site. I think it's been much more. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicants are here too as well.
Why don't we open the public hearing at 6:21? Do you have anything that you want to say in addition?
We'll have Mike talk. Yeah. I'm Gary, I own the property. Is that scale drawing to 8-foot set? Oh, I'll on first, please. I'll just upset you, and I don't want to do that. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Is this scale drawing, and I don't know, is that 8 foot by 18 foot? I don't remember.
Parking spaces?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, car lots don't, that's what you do in a parking lot when you're got people parking their cars in a paid for parking lot, is 18
Right.
by 8.
And I'll remind you that we had this conversation the last time, and that there was conversation because we want it striped, and we're not going to do something where there's a little space and then a big space, little space, that type of thing. So we had the conversation about what size would they be. And this is what you agreed to.
Well,
And so
I-
we agreed to it. And I do understand and appreciate that this is, a lot with cars for sale, not a parking lot type of thing, but that's what was agreed to. And so I'm not seeing any reason right now to change that. I'm looking right now for something that, what I'm seeing, first, you did one thing right, where you got the plan that, needed to be done. I have questions about some of the other points that were on there, but I'm not seeing, in particular, because of the plan that you have, you went back to every single solitary thing that we said was not going to be acceptable. And so I
Right
wanna know
there,
why.
that's not acceptable?
This is not acceptable. This,
No, not that one, I'm talking about the other one.
that was acceptable.
Right, that was just an illustration for what you said, we should run a business and make a living on that property. That's what you said we have to have in order to make a business.
Right.
It would be like me, you're not a car dealer, you don't own this property. I could say to you guys, you gotta work out of a space that's a closet size. And you'd say, we can't do it.
Then we would find.
You know, I mean, that's what
something
you're
else.
doing, is you're telling me, and in order to work with that other plan, whoops, excuse me, I waved my hand, I'm Italian. We can't work with it. So I just did this one. I had the people draw up this one to say, well, here's a space, the same space, and I think this one might be 7 foot by 17 foot, which is acceptable. You
7
go
by
down to,
18.
if you go to any car lot, they don't use 8 by 18 parking spaces.
Okay, and again, we had talked about that we would not accept, that there would not be setbacks on this property, with the exception of the east side from kind of the corner of the southeast corner of the building going north. There have to be setbacks from MnDOT's right of way.
Right.
And we had talked about that there wouldn't be parking and then park cars behind it, et cetera, et cetera. We had said that there would be setbacks. There are no setbacks here.
Ma'am, I forgot your name. Michelle. I'm Gary, by the way. All I did is drew up a possibility of how this space could be used. Now, what I brought it to you is you can say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, you could do this, you can do that. I'm just trying to work out something where we could make a living. That's all. But if we have to work with that other diagram, you just took my retirement away. You just made my lot not worth it what it was. You know, I used to draw $3,500 a month rent from that place, and now I couldn't draw with 12 cars. I could maybe get 800. So you
And
cut
what
my
we're
income
saying
per
is that
year.
this was the agreement that we came to of how to use that lot.
I
And-
used it for 25 years, and I used to have 30 cars on there a
Okay,
lot
and
of the
again,
day.
it was pointed out that that was not what was supposed to be there. And we've had that conversation last time
And I
as
had
well.
one of the city planners or somebody come
Right,
over,
okay, and what
and
we
he
had
said, this looks good, this'll work. That's what he said.
Okay,
I'm not lying to you. I'm gonna go to heaven when I die.
okay, whatever. Okay, what we agreed to was that this was not going to be acceptable.
I understand that.
Okay,
I just drew
so
this for
why-
you to maybe work with me.
Okay, what is there to work with? You have no setbacks. You are in MnDOT's right-of-way. You do not have
Those
a
spaces in front
reasonable
aren't
amount of
car
time.
spaces. Those are just spaces. The line from MnDOT, where we're going is from, it's the same as the other one. These spots mean nothing. This is where we're parking. That's hitting the setback. If you see, there's numbers. Those are where cars are.
Okay, where's the setback there? What is the setback on here?
I'll show you the other one.
No, it's different because the setback, the property line is here and the setback to the space is only a couple feet, Gary.
Yes.
And on this plan,
But I
it's
didn't
the
use
same
those
line.
spaces in the front.
We
The
told them
spaces-
to keep the same setbacks in the front. The
Okay, in your drawing, it isn't
See
showing
those,
that.
those blank spaces up there without numbers? That's all setback.
Okay, but you can't park a car in,
1 through 10
Cannot.
are only half stalls.
right,
What he's saying is, I mean, it's not properly marked as from, this is just starting here.
But that's not 18 feet from that dash line to
We
the
don't have
back.
to be 18
From here,
feet.
10 feet.
it isn't even
17.
17 feet,
Okay, 17.
Well,
it's
that's,
not.
No, I mean, the way that they're
Showing
drawn
that.
is,
I guess,
they're all the way up to the property line.
and I understand your perspectives and what you're trying to do, and, you know, obviously what we're trying to do, we're just trying to conduct a business there, and, you know, I understand, I agree that setbacks are from the setbacks from the highway are needed. I don't like it, but it's needed for visibility. It's just, you know what I mean? If you ever pull out of that lot, I don't want an accident. I mean, it just needs to happen. I mean, again, I don't like it because you lose space, but if you ever pulled out of there, that's a treacherous road there. I mean, it really is. So you need to have that. My only question is, and if we can't be, if we're not open-minded to this, we came here with wanting to make a revision in the variances. We wanted to make some, you know, for us, the hard thing that we're having understanding, and if we can't compromise and we can't get any flexibility, it's hard to understand, thinking, us being there to make this work if we just, the variances around the 10 feet in the back and no parking in the southwest, east, makes no sense at all. Be like going to a business saying you can't use that or you can't park there. It doesn't even make sense.
Yes, actually it does.
every.
When
business-
we're talking, every business that we talk to, we look at safety features, we look at sight lines, we look at setbacks, we look at all of this, which I also explained the last time that you were here. We all had a conversation about this. And you putting your markings that way, you have now moved into that southeast corner where West Hennepin, the fire chief, and your neighbors said, we don't want any of that there.
Where is that?
Right here. You have moved, putting all of this in here, you have now moved into this space.
Oh, we'll take number 1 out. That's what I said. We're here to
That's-
compromise.
That's the mute point.
Okay. No, you're here to hear a different answer than what you got last time. That's really what you're here for.
Have you ever had anybody?
No,
say,
what
"Okay,
we're after is, we don't agree with that, and we're just wondering what direction we go in, because it doesn't,
go
we
in the
can't
direction-
comprehend it to
you
make
go
sense
in
to
the
make it
direction
work
that
for a
we-
business, that's all.
You go in the direction that we gave you last time. You did the site plan. We talked about the setbacks.
We did
On
that.
this
Here, hold on.
side, okay, and now you have a drawing that tells me that the cars will be up that far from Highway 10, Highway 12. Yes, because you're going to go and say, we don't have a setback here. There aren't any setbacks here, there's no setback back here. And then there isn't here. This is what we agreed to, no setback here, keep cars out of here.
Okay, we'll take that 1 out.
You're gonna have to take more than one. We had talked about this not being acceptable, and partly because, again, of having the ability to get around the building for safety, for maneuverability of your clients, your customers, for yourself.
I
Now-
operated that for 25 years and no one ever drove around like that.
Okay, and the
25 years.
conversation that we had the last time about the fact that, yes, there were 30-some cars on that lot, was against all of the things that had been in play before. There was a long conversation by several of us, including John Fay, who is not here with us this evening, where we talked about those are not acceptable things anymore. You're here for a conditional use permit variance that goes with the property. We're saying that's not acceptable, that we want to have guidelines and rules in place, that you'll be held to those. And what you're coming back with is, we don't want to do that, which is what you said the last time.
No, we're just asking, we're hoping that we can figure out why you were justified, because it doesn't, I mean, if you don't, when we first started this, and you haven't been involved, we got the feeling that you guys wanted to work with us to have a business there, a used car business. That's not you, but I'm just saying that's how we thought. So we went through this journey to go through this. When we got 50 yards to the left, 50 yards behind us, and we're like making projections someday if that gets developed, well, is there any set plan that it's gonna be in develop?
That doesn't make any difference.
Well, sure it does.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. You use the property as it is, just like everybody else does. There are setbacks assigned to everyone's property in town, residential, commercial, industrial. You follow those, unless we agree that there's a reason that that can have some variance. We set that last time. We agreed to not have the 50 feet for along 12. We went down to 10. We said you could go out to 5 and then 10, so that there are differences in the setbacks. We agreed to that. So you've got what we agreed to.
So,
All right.
our
Can I-
plan is, you have no flexibility in wanting to work with us. That's all I'm
Well,
asking. If you
I
don't, that's
guess I'd
fine.
like to ask a question, and that is, you're saying that the agreement we came to last time isn't workable, and you came back with, if you can flip back to the 32, you came back with this. Is this the proposal that you're suggesting, or are you just saying that this, in an ideal world, this is what we would do?
Exactly.
Ideal
Okay,
world.
and so what are you proposing then?
We're proposing, and the same thing that we proposed last month, and Michelle, please, you're not the only one that's here. I mean, maybe other people have some input on this too. I'd like to hear, are you, speak for everybody here? I'm just curious.
No, obviously I don't,
Okay.
and they know that. What I'm trying to do
Well, I'm just
as
trying to
the-
see if
as the
anyone else
chair-
has any-
No, as the chair, I get to tell you what
I
you
understand.
did agree to.
I understand that. I'm just
All right?
wondering. What we're saying, I agree there need to be 10-foot setback, and the only thing I'm saying is, in order for it to be workable for us realistically, I understand about all that parking there, we need to have no setbacks on the boundaries of the property. So no 5 feet, no 10 feet. And then being able to park in the southeast corner, we need to utilize that space.
And how many cars does that
25,
render you? 25?
yes.
Do you have a plan that shows that? I guess,
I don't know who came up with that plan, but it doesn't, here's the dilemma we have in doing this. For Mr. Keller to spend the money. It'd be like if someone was gonna do an addition, you're asking us to do, we're doing an addition onto a house. And we come to this board and you say, well, put the addition, then we'll let you know if we'll do it. That's not how it works. We're looking, if
If I
you're
were to
saying
build
to
an
us, that's
addition,
all I wanna know.
I would
That's
be-
all we're willing to do, that's it, we can move on from here.
If I was building an addition, I would be expected to come up with a plan and present it and submit it to the city for approval. And that plan, or that, the ordinances that follow with residential property have setbacks, and my plan better follow those setbacks. If not, I would come back with a proposal of what I would be asking for and reasons why. So that's why I asked the question, is what, if 32 is pie in the sky, if there's no rules at all, and evidently 12 is 12 to 15 maybe, with the setbacks, and you want something in between. So I guess what I was looking for is what is your proposal that we can consider? Do you have a plan that has 25 or whatever?
I get it. But my point is, if everything is locked in and that's all you're willing to do is what's on that last page, then there's no, you know what I'm saying? We'd be happy to do that if we're open to what we come, to that more direct plan. I guess that's my question.
If I could, Chair, just
Go ahead.
for context, I mean, in looking at this, it's not that big of a site, so if I could offer, I think that in order to realize 25, and we hadn't really talked a specific number with the applicants, they had come to us and said, here's a plan that meets your recommendation, and it doesn't work, and I said, well, put something together. They put together kind of a max scenario, not asking necessarily for that max scenario, but showing what they think that site could yield. But the reality is, to get 25 spaces, the planning commission would have to allow a reduction in space size down to 7 feet width, and they'd have to allow a reduction in the drive aisle around the building to 8 feet, and they'd have to allow a reduction to the north and west setbacks. So if there was direction provided by the planning commission to change what had been recommended before, I think we could put together that plan, but without more direction, I mean,
Right.
you can see by that, if you just take the 10 spaces out of the front, off the front, and you count the rest of those spaces, you're somewhere around 18 spaces. That's what they're proposing, and then if you were to hold tight on the 10 feet along Highway 12, you might be able
Well,
to yield another
What I'm
6-7 spaces, so.
My opinion is that I can see going to 7 foot on the sales lot, parking spaces. It's not, you're right, it's not a typical parking lot situation. You are controlling the cars, really. You're probably pulling the cars in and out, and if you want door dings in your cars that you're trying to sell, I mean, that's your business, right?
That's why we open them and then bring them out.
That's right. So I think going to 7 for the sales stalls, not the customer stalls. The customer and the handicap stalls, I think, should be, per code.
I think we got the handicap a little wider.
And the other thing that I'd be open to considering is reducing the northern setback from 10 to 5. And then go with 5 on the north, 5 on the west, maintaining the 10 on the south. That visibility along Highway 12 is important, and also maintaining the 12-foot drive aisle around the building for public safety standpoint. I think that was the reason why the 12-foot and not 8-foot drive aisle around the building was important, is because it was a public safety issue. With all of that, I'm a visual person. I took the liberty and came up with my own sketch of what all that means, and I made copies for everybody, if I may, as maybe a discussion starting point. Okay.
Okay.
Let me pass these out.
Thanks, Tim.
And this is just my sketch. This is not your sketch. This is not approved. This is not anything but a discussion point. And did I make it up? I made one for you guys.
Okay, good.
So in red, 1 through 18 are stalls that are 7 feet wide. Now, actually, I should back up. This drawing was, I took Gronberg's drawing and scanned it and blew it up to a scale and put it in AutoCAD so I could play with rectangles and make it all fit. So this is actually to scale. And I know it is because I've got Gronberg's measurements here along the perimeter, so I could scale to that. So I've got 8 across the front, 9 and 10 are smaller to squeeze in there, as Mark mentioned. 11 through 18 are 7 by 18. 12-foot aisle around the building, and then customer parking along the east with a one van accessible stall, although it's a little bit awkward, along the east. It only renders a space to get through there of 14.5 feet, which maybe needs to be more, I'm not sure, but with this, we get 18 plus 2 or 20 total, as I think a good sort of compromise between the needs and the rationale for the setbacks that we all talked about, and maximizing your space so you can be as profitable as you can.
So, Mark, a conditional use goes with the land.
Correct.
What is the one that is renewable,
An interim use.
interim use? Okay. So we could do that type of thing?
Well,
Or
the
not?
conditional use is already there in place. The conditional use was granted by the city in 2000, or it was granted historically on that property and has been in place. It was amended in 2013 and is still there technically. The provision of the conditional use, or the condition of it, was that they provide the city with a site plan that met all applicable city criteria. In order to do that, they said, we can't. We need to ask the city for a variance. So the use as a used car lot is already there. We've already granted that use, conditioned upon them satisfying a site plan that meets all of the applicable criteria. They could do that. I mean, there are some spaces on that lot, it wouldn't be very many, that meet applicable criteria. But what they've come back and said is, we'd like a variance from the Highway 12 setback, from the north, east, and west property lines, as well as a reduction in parking space. So really what we're considering tonight, or what
Is
we,
variance.
is just the variance.
Right. So you would get 18.
Plus 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could make this one a selling, because you've already got here. You would still have two.
No, this
No.
is, number one is sales also.
Ah,
And I wasn't sure what the previous, no parking area in front of the sign was all about. That one would actually end up being a foot short of 18, but still
Doable.
doable. I'm not sure why that whole space needed to be blocked off, but.
if you took out the, could you get back here at all?
No, the
No.
blue line is dash line here is the 5-foot setback.
Yeah, but without the 5-foot setback,
So it's,
you
No, 'cause
could.
you need to have 12 feet around.
yeah, so 7, if the blue line is 5, then, you know, imagine 2 more feet, you
Yeah.
know.
Is not still not
7 is there. Maybe 1 in the far corner, but.
Yeah.
Your reaction?
I have a reaction. Thank you for all your hard work. We're the only people that are keeping me here. Apologize.
The previous owners of the building behind us, and they must have a new owner now. But he says, I'll lease you 50 feet around the back and 50 feet on the side. This is years ago. And they said I couldn't do my car lot if I was just leasing that other space. And I didn't question it, they were real flexible at that time. So we just parked cars and we went along. And I don't know who owns it now, but if they were willing to lease me, the guy said he'd lease me that property for $1 and then he could close it up whenever if he sold the property. Can we just lease space around us to extend our lot?
I would say probably not. Part of the conditional use that we had on here was that all of the places where the cars would be parked would be paved. And.
Well, if I paved it.
Right, and that, you know, when you were looking at it, we had even suggested that there be a subdivision of the lot. That's one of the questions that I have. We still don't have that taken care of because
Well-
you're using both lots.
I appreciate that, but, you know, what I wanna do is find out if we can live with what you're gonna, approve for me, the condition that you're gonna allow me to have. I'm not gonna spend a dime, I'm not gonna line the lot and everything, if you say I can only have 11 or 12 cars.
Well, the conditional use permit is for your property, not his, yours. So I don't see.
But if I
a
bought
conditional-
that property,
If you bought it and combined it, you could potentially do it, Gary. You'd have to.
but I have to buy
and-
it, I couldn't just lease it.
Well, I mean, there's probably a way that you could lease it, but you'd then have to amend the conditional use permit to extend onto that portion, and then you'd have to ask for a variance from the setbacks because you'd be crossing over property lines. So there,
It's complicated.
It's possible, but it's more complicated.
Yeah. And I know he won't sell me that extra or the last guy went, he said, I'll lease it to you for $1, you know, for a 100-year lease, but you and I are gonna shake on it if I need the property back. You know how that works in business.
Would that be an interim use permit?
I mean, the city could determine how they'd wanna grant that. I mean,
All
you
we're
could
trying to
just
do
write a
is make
condition that
this
said,
work.
if the lease goes away, that the
Yeah.
permission to, you know, the spaces go away. But
I don't know, that's just a in the cloud idea for me. So right now, you're saying you're gonna, with the deal that you drew up.
Well, that was just my suggestion. I don't know
So,
how the
you
rest
know,
of the
just
other
an
commissioners
idea, it
feel
isn't
about
like it's in stone, but it's a, you know, it's taking a look, which I really appreciate, you know, just kind of say, let's make this work if we can for these poor old guys, you know. He's not as old as me, but he's smarter. Anyway, maybe Mike wants to say something, but I really appreciate all the effort that you guys are putting into this. And Michelle, I know you got better things to do than to argue with me.
Don't, let's just stop. Let's just stop with that.
Only, the only one thing I would, thank you, by the way, Steve, this is heading in, is a good direction, and I like, when I see this, I can make a little sense. The only, there's a realistic sense that I have here, just because of the business, and I just wanna point one thing out, and it goes to your graph, is this area right here, okay, this area right here, yeah, is kind of a space I need to use for a plow truck. And the only reason why, I don't want a beat up old truck parked in the front row of Highway 12. That if.
What'd you do? Sorry.
You're all funny, Bobby.
It's not.
Oh, Mr. Comedian over there.
It's got where
Okay,
people wake
it's
up.
kinda like closing time, huh?
You're like
All right.
Okay,
Mariah
bar's
Carey, right?
closed. I know that light. Oh, I gotta start all over here.
Nope, it should
Let's
pop
start
up.
all over.
Well, if I can type in the correct password.
Anyways, we don't need to go into, the only thing is that area in the back there, I still would allow from 12 feet, and I have to have a plow truck, and really to utilize those 18 spaces I'm in, you know, is that there still would be 12 feet within the property. The dynamic would work. I just need a place to park a plow truck. There is a sense of business, that's all I'm suggesting, you know, it's not like, it still would have 12 feet around, and the property should be on there, I just, you know.
What-
You need, you know, if I got it, if you won't allow anything here, I mean, I still need a place to park a plow truck, and I don't, you know, with only 18 spaces, it's kinda, you know what I mean, there's a sense of, gotta have a plow truck, you know what I mean, to plow the lot.
Are there doors or anything back in that corner? That alcove there is, what's there? Is it just walls or is there a door?
Just walls, there's 2 windows right here.
Mhm.
Just 2 windows, and then this is where you think you can pull a car inside.
Okay.
This is like a garage door in the back, it's a power garage door. So this is just kinda like, this space here would still be 12 feet around, or
Did,
actually more diameter around, all the way around that way, but just went from 12 feet here, here, here. I'm just asking.
Does anyone remember if Dave said that a car could or could not be parked right next to the building?
yeah, the comment was that he didn't want any vehicles next to
Right.
the building. So that was one comment that
Right.
Maple Plain Fire had.
But it's not going to, you know, this will allow a fire, if it need be, truck
Yeah,
back there where you're gonna be able
Yeah,
to.
that's a good point.
expose
If we still allowed a 12-foot aisle, say we put a stall in that corner, but then had the 12-foot aisle go around the outside of
Yeah,
that
you-
stall.
Right, you would have a 12-foot aisle. I think it was more the vehicle up against the building.
Right, cause
but-
he wants
But I
his
could
guys to
clarify
be able
that.
to go around.
I could clarify that with
That would be
the
helpful.
fire chief too.
I have a question. There isn't a fire truck that could go around that property.
That
We've
was more
acknowledged
for
that.
just
We
not having
acknowledge that.
combustibles up against the building, I
Right.
think was
Guys.
the issue.
Yeah, and manpower
But
around.
that would be my only, you know, if you could, you know, whatever, we could certainly,
Stephen, the only other comment I'd have is this space here, that van accessible space.
It's backwards, I know.
Well, the only problem is they can park in a van accessible space, you can park anywhere in that whole space. So I would be concerned that
Well,
if,
even if it's striped?
yeah, it doesn't matter. From an accessibility standpoint, you can park on either side of it regardless of where the aisle is, or where the striping is.
You can park on either side of the striping if there's a stall on either side, but if there isn't a stall on one side, if there-
Yeah, but
if-
certain vans have certain sides that you can get in and out of, so that they allow you to park in a situation where you just have the one, they'd
So-
allow you to park in either. My only thing is,
I guess,
if somebody pulled in
yeah,
and they
it's
pulled in down the
awkward,
middle,
yeah.
my only
That gets
consolidation to that though would be put that accessible space back right in the front if it's needed, and then I would offer that this space here, the one behind that, even though it would encroach into the 12 feet, a vehicle pulling around the site might still be, I mean, you're encroaching something into that, but I still think there's probably a viable space back there.
Well, you had, on yours, you had that there was, here's the handicap parking here and customer, and then you had one here.
Yeah.
So
and-
that could be.
Well, and
I
we're
would-
talking
I
about
would do
utilizing that. I'm just saying right here, I think,
If you got 18.4 according to Groundberg.
Right.
And if that's a sales stall at 7 feet, then you've got 11.4.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the only reason I say that is because if you're pulling in reasonably, you're gonna pull in and go around the building this way, likely. And here, because we'd keep this all clear back here with
You've
no
got
car.
turning radius
And you
there.
could pull.
Yeah.
You could pull through. So you could still get the 21 if that,
Yeah,
and then get rid of that van accessible here, just so that it's, kind of keeps that front entranceway more open. Just keeping with your sketch then.
Mhm.
I don't know, to me that, if the planning commission was comfortable with that.
well, and
might
then,
be a
an handicap
recommendation.
space is not used that often, so it also provides a kind of a wider entrance into the site then too.
Yeah.
Mhm. So there would be a total of how many?
There'd be 21, there'd be 8, there'd be the 19 sales spaces, 1 accessible and 1 customer parking. So really these 2 spaces here, you'd have customer parking in this front space, and then you'd have 2 sales spaces here. You'd have an accessible space here, and then the rest of it would be per Stefan's sketch.
Which would drop, leave the 10 feet in the front.
It would
and
leave 10 in
5
front, 5 on the west, 5 on the north, and 0 on the
side.
east, which we had previously.
Right. Is that going to do it?
This is the guy that has to prove it. He's my renter. He's my lifeline. At any rate, I have a handicap bathroom, because that was one of the things we did the whole remodeling. And they came and says, oh, you gotta have a handicap bathroom. Oh, your front door is only 34 and a half. It has to be 36. So we did all that. And I was there operating the place for 20-some years. I've never had a handicapped person come in the office and use my handicap bathroom in 20-some years.
Something to look forward to.
It's the law.
You know, it's a good thing they didn't make me do 3 handicap bathrooms, one for the women, one for, anyway, just let you know.
If, the planning commission would, I can check with fire if that space would be acceptable. It looks like that width is only 6, I think that's 5.9 right there, but
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, presuming that you could get a vehicle in there. If that, if the planning commission wanted to recommend that they would recommend approval subject to fire approval, that'd make it 22, but we could certainly move a recommendation like that to the council. And in between now and the council, certainly we'd have that answer.
Okay.
So it'd be.
So yes or no?
Did you say 22?
With 2 parking, 2 customer parking?
Subject to fire
Yeah.
department
you have-
approval for that
Well,
22nd.
let's clarify, how many sales, how many?
So 19 sales,
Yep.
2
Right.
customer parking, 1 of those is accessible.
Yeah.
So yeah, we take this sketch here, we take the van accessible parking space, move it back to the front here.
Mhm.
And then we would take,
Well, that's gonna take away.
that would take 2 spaces.
2
so we'd
spaces
be-
away.
We'd be at, well,
You'd be
you know
at
what?
18.
I wonder, Maybe not.
That-
We
that's
need, what,
kinda
a
why I-
5 foot?
That's why I put it over there, because I thought if the no parking area could overlap the 12-foot around the building, then, you know, it would help save space.
You know, if we bumped all of these back though, these 3 back, and put the van accessible here, it's gonna be open 99% of the time, and I think it would still work.
You mean, put the van accessible
Striped.
Back
out,
over here.
to the east of
to
number
the
1?
East of number 1. And then we take this space, and what we're gonna add is this space and move it back to the 5-foot setback line.
Well, see how that works. I mean, that's gonna, you need 13 feet.
For the drive aisle width.
No, I'm sorry, you need 16 for the van accessible, right?
16 foot in depth.
Width.
This way.
You need 8-foot stall and 8-foot.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you've got the 7 and you'd need an additional 8,
9.
9.
That's gonna stick out quite a bit.
But again, you've got the room there because it's, and if we move all those other ones, if we move this whole clump back to the north, then we're still gonna maintain a decent access coming in.
Yeah, I failed to bring a scale with.
Well, I've got a scale. You want it?
Yeah, it'd be great.
You wanna draw it?
I'm glad you,
I think one thing that to consider too is that Mike's probably driving to work. Where's Mike gonna park? If Mike's driving to work.
So what do we have there? That's the
Then
question.
he has to.
Well, you know, in the driveway,
I
is
had
that the,
understood
is
that
that
he
the
took
apron
cars
right here?
home.
Yeah,
You know, you got a lot of cars right in front of your apron.
but you're not, but they're not using that apron.
Okay.
Only preliminary
I don't
here,
know
but
what
we
you guys
got.
think. I don't know where he would park, though.
17
On this
I,
plan.
I
Yeah, so that works
guess we
pretty
were
well.
having to take him at his word.
So,
that would be your
So that's it,
handicap.
that's your striping and
Yeah.
then you'd have your,
this is gonna be 8 here, so it's gonna be approximately here.
actually I'd stripe it the other way, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right?
Well, it's gonna be 17 to here, right?
Yep.
17, 18, 19, 20 with,
And then the
and 20,
21.
21, yeah, so 19 sales and 2 customer,
And then how about back here?
and maybe a spot for your truck.
Right.
Did have to verify that, cause I'm.
Did you get that conclusion? Come on over.
I just thought, is this public parking out here in front? Just, 'cause I could just bring my
Public.
plow truck over here, Bobby.
Oh, to the school parking lot? We rent
Alright.
it from
I'm
them,
kidding.
but yeah, technically it would be
So,
public.
these are 2 7-foot S is sales, all the way back to the 5-foot setback.
Okay.
And then customer parking would be this stall here, okay? And then I screwed this up, but we need this much space for the handicap. So we put stall here and then striping here. So entry would be, you know, like this.
Oh, okay, yep.
Right, so we're using this stall
I get
number
it,
1
yep.
for the
Handicap.
handicapped customer stall. That's the 2 there. So we've got, instead of 18, we got 17, 18, 19 19
Sales.
sales, stalls, and 2 customer. And maybe a truck if the fire chief
Now,
allows it.
that could be, because there's a car parked in here. But anyways, that's neither here.
Car can park inside?
Yeah.
That, sales, or would that be well, it's
Yeah.
up to you, but.
Okay.
So that's 21 spaces, 19
Right.
sales, 2 customer, 1 of those customers is handicapped.
That's the best it's gonna get.
Plus a possibility of one.
Plus
more.
1 behind if the fire department would approve it, that'd be up to
What was that?
22.
Plus one more.
Truck if possible, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Is there a-
so then, on top of that, so we would have, the Highway 12 setback is 10 feet.
Yep.
On the west property line, it's 5.
Yeah,
On
everything
the-
would,
Those would stay the same with the rear yard setback, north property line would be 5.
5 feet.
Okay. Then, again, continuing on with your, this is from page 14.
Yep.
Okay. Still no vehicle parking permitted in southeast corner.
Correct?
With,
That's correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. The parking stalls are to be 7 by 18, is that
Well,
correct?
sales spaces would be 7 feet
By
wide by 18 foot deep.
okay.
And customer.
With some exceptions in the corners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, and doing that. The
Yeah,
drive
just-
aisle is still 12 feet in
Correct.
width?
Slight
Okay.
with, yeah, I mean, do we wanna note the slight
Little
variance
bit,
at the northeast
East,
corner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have the handicap accessible, and you have a customer parking. All parking spaces and handicapped are striped
Yep.
and installed. I had,
The
the other.
handicapped have not only striped, they have to have a upright sign.
Right, and also that they're maintained.
Yeah, in that condition,
Okay.
you're right, Mardella,
Right.
and I think at the last one we had and
Right.
signed appropriately.
And then the other two, the first two, do we have any verification about the fuel tanks? I think you were going to
My
be
purchase
looking for,
agreement said the tanks were removed.
okay.
Yeah, and they just need to furnish that.
You need that, we need a copy of that for the records. And then, the subdivision,
And we've asked the applicant to submit, they told us that until they got more clarification whether the planning commission would change or look at their, the meeting tonight, then they would submit following that, so.
okay?
Prior to going to city council, they have to submit that application.
Right.
And that would come back to the planning commission, but,
Right, and all of this needs to be done,
correct.
okay? How's everybody feel?
This looks good. I'm glad you took a look at that, Kirsten. You're very much of a, like you said, a visual person and very much to scale, and it really helps.
All right,
You're gonna give us our homework assignments, email it or something?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So you guys can take a vote on that, and then
All right.
we can update them on the
on
All right,
Wednesday.
I'll-
exact
I'll-
items.
I'll
can we
make a
get a,
motion.
can we get a close the public hearing first?
Oh, yes, we'll close the public hearing at 7:07.
I'll make the motion that we recommend to the council the variance as you all just described.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No. Okay, all right, done. Thank you for doing this.
Got to. I was so tired of inaccurate drawings, I was like, I just gotta do it.
Yeah.
Well, you must be very used to doing it. Can I see that little thing?
Glasses?
No, that's the whole thing.
I know, but you
Maybe
need
I'll-
glasses for that. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
This is what you use to do that?
Bobby, do you wanna bring up,
Use AutoCAD.
about, commissioners, or should we do that in February? How did you wanna do that?
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that council will need to have too. I want to include them about if we, what we'll do in terms of if we want to add advertising for additional planning commission, commissioners, which, I mean, we lost John, he's now with the council, so. But yeah, no, I think that's a conversation that needs to go to council for not just planning, but park and all of our commissions, which we will be doing.
Then in February, okay,
Yep.
that sounds good. Anything else that anybody has?
I just want to apologize for being late. I was thinking 7 all along.
That's all right.
For
This
some
is the
reason-
first time, first meeting. We're starting early.
Yeah, I just had just this,
The moment.
the moment at 6:14 till, you know, weren't we talking about changing the time at some point? But I never got official
must have-
notification of
you
that.
got
So
here
then
at
I looked at the agenda and I go, oh, gosh.
Yeah, no, that's right, we have it. Okay, so, well, if not,
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.